Thanks for listening to Fresh Air at 5 in the past, on the podcast, in the dailies, in Twitter, and for connecting with me as you have. I appreciate that very much. I can't believe I'm at episode 40 right now. It's a privilege and it's an honor to be able to share my voice in this way, in this little micro podcasting way, in my recording studio that moves around with me, and my camera's at the end of my arm. Headphones have the microphone on them, and I get to talk about the things that I hear, the things that I listen to, and the things that I am challenged with, and I get to share that with you. Thanks for listening. Take care. Have a fabulous week, and I look forward to seeing you and hearing you in the next episodes. And so to all the podcasters that are in my head, thanks so much for doing what you do. All right. Take care. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Batsheva Frankel from Overthrowing Education, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected.
Hey, PLN, Monday, October 4th, 2021, out here for Fresh Air at 5 this morning. After I had a rejuvenating weekend, I was up country, went fishing, and I caught some fish on a lake, and experienced all the challenges and difficulties of fly fishing, and with, trout that are wild in a place that I hadn't been before, but I had a great experience, managed to catch some fish. And, I relate that to kind of what I heard this morning as I'm listening to Overthrowing Education. And I don't know the episode number, Batsheva, but as I turned it on this morning, I heard my own voice. And it's the bumper that I recorded for Educational Podcasting Network with Chris Nessie and all of us that share these with our people through our podcast. And it was part of hearing my own voice that reminded me that what I'm doing with this podcast, Fresh Air at 5, is making a difference somehow. And in my own life, and just bringing and raising my standard of what I do so that I can express myself and be out there in social media and be present in places that I wouldn't have been before. So as I listen to this episode, it's called Overthrowing Transcripts and Standardized Tests, and it was with Nadav Zimmer, and you talked about the idea of how the student transcript or the high school transcript can drive for credit students to do things so that they can get good test scores and to get credit on their transcript, and that is inequitable. We see the inequity of that through standardized tests. So how can we have students just demonstrate their own learning? And Nadav suggested that we have a media-rich social media type of space where, this is my understanding of what I heard, that they create content, get it out there, and have it vetted by others around them, students, etc., to get credit to demonstrate their learning. I have some challenges with this, and I'm going to share them in the next segment. Hang on one second. One more thing for October 4th, 2021, as I just listened to episode 58 of the Overthrowing Education podcast with Basheva Frankel, and she had on guest Nadav Zimmer, who talked about overthrowing transcripts and such. Okay, I said that before. So anyhow, continuing my thoughts about this is that the whole media-rich, social media kind of app-based, I'm going to have a way of demonstrating and showing that I have street credit as opposed to school credit for my learning. I think it's a great idea. My only challenge for that is, how do you get kids that are super introverted to engage in this thing that pushes them so far outside their comfort zone that our anxiety levels rise and things like that. So I'm concerned about that. I've watched this kind of happen through social media, and how the presence of students in social media can lead to high anxiety, possibly. I've seen it in adults, the presence, being present all the time with each other. But I think there's positives and negatives with this idea. That's my thoughts. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just old-fashioned and I need to open my mind up a little bit more. I'm obviously doing that because I'm listening to Overthrowing Education and other podcasts that stretch my thinking. And so I am growing, and I am getting closer and closer to that. I like how you talked about it, hyper-focused, project-based learning. I think that's a great idea, and if we have students create portfolios, which is like what you're talking about, but portfolios of demonstrating their learning that they can take with them that is beyond tests and scores like that, I think that would be a great idea. Thanks, Betsheva, for challenging us. Thank you, Nadav, for your thoughts, and I look forward to 2022 when this app goes live to see how it will overthrow education. Peace out. Have a good one. Got one more podcast to listen to. Bye. One more thing for October 4, 2021. As I'm wrapping up and coming around the corner to my house, I just spent the past bit of time listening to Season 2, Episode 40 of The Innovator's Mindset, where I am the guest on the show, and I got to listen to myself talk with George Koros. And George, big shout out, push a shout out button, George, as we talked about consumption, collaboration, and creation, and how you have seen that in my journey. And I appreciate the title, the thoughtful title that you came up with during our podcast recording, as I talked about how I consumed and I collaborated through Twitter over the years, and then I started creating my own content here on FreshAirAtFive, my podcast. And George, it's funny, I recorded with you, and then you go away and you forget what you had to say. And then you go back and listen and go, wow, that was, I'm glad I did that, So people, for the sake of George, okay, and for me, because apparently I'm on George's podcast, to take a listen to what we both have to say. It's not a linear track from consumption to collaboration to creation, but it goes around in circles, just much like the design process is. And we have to iterate, and we have to change the way we look at things so that we can be effective in our space. And just wanted to say thanks, George, so very much. I'm so serious. You are one of my edgy heroes, and you are a normal guy that is doing amazing things because you take the time to care and connect. And I like how you talked in the intro to this podcast about how at conferences you call it connection and collaboration time, or no, collection and reflection time, instead of calling it break time at the conference, because the break time at the conference is very much about a break. It's like stop thinking, go do something, and go from here to there, as opposed to stopping and collaborating and connecting and creating. And I've seen you do that on Twitter. So great. George, appreciate you. Happy day, everyone. One last thing for October 4, 2021. As I'm wrapping up this morning, I'm reflecting, actually, like George talks about what I heard. And I'm looking at the season number for George. It's episode number 40 of season 2. And this is recording for season 1. I only have one season, but episode 40 of FreshAirAtFive, my podcast. And so it's funny how it came out, and I'm in the 40th season or episode, I get that wrong, of my podcast. So thanks, George, for having me on episode 40, and that this is episode 40 of mine. Coincidence? Maybe. But, here it is. Number of people that might be important like that. So, all right. Have a great day. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for making it possible for me to keep going and have episode 40 of Fresh Air at 5. Talk to you soon. Want to listen to other episodes? There's 39 more. Tell someone about it. Take a listen yourself. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. Fresh air at 5 is damp air at 5. It's soaking out here, and that's okay because I walk a lot in the rain and spend time outside all the time, just as I was telling George Koros on Innovator's Mindset that I was a guest on recently. So I enjoyed that a lot. I really enjoyed listening to our conversation because I have so much respect for George, as how he draws the goodness out of people and brings strengths out of people. It's fantastic. All right, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to the Staff Room Podcast, episode 96. And to my surprise, Tim Cavey was a co-host with FAAF. And so Che wasn't in the picture with this episode. And Che, missed hearing your voice, missed you being here. But Tim, fantastic to hear you be a co-host with FAAF as you broke down and talked about educational technology and the hype or not of it. And it's a great, important conversation that we need to have, because we came into the pandemic and all of a sudden every day everybody was like ed tech, because we needed to use the tools to be able to connect with our students. But then, is it too much? As we are back into our schools, is the ed tech falling off? Are we utilizing those tools for the good that they can do, even in our face-to-face classroom space? Great conversation that Tim and Pav had, and I appreciate you talking about, it's too hyped. There's too much abundance of it. But again, it comes back to boundaries and how we as teachers need to have boundaries in our space. I've got a tool belt as a carpenter that I carry around. I have also, let's go to my fishing analogy. I've got my fishing boat and I have a certain amount of gear that I take fishing. I was just out fishing this past weekend and I can't take everything with me. I can take a limited amount of things because there's only so much space and operating space in a boat to be able to take so many things. But beyond that, the fishing store, like the Home Depot Tool Center, has a lot of tools, and we have to be selective about what we use. So we can't have them all. I'll continue this when I listen to the second part. Peace out. Bye. Okay, I'm not done yet. One more thing for October 5th, 2021. There's a quote at the top of my Twitter page, and this is in reflection of episode 96 of the Staff Room Podcast, as Che and Pav had guest on to co-host Tim Cavey with Pav, and they were talking about educational technology, the hype and all that goes along with it. And you should take a listen to that episode if you haven't. So I encourage you to do that today. Go find it in your podcast queue, put it in there so you can listen and hear this conversation, episode 96 of the Staff Room Podcast. I have a quote at the top of my Twitter page for my @BrianCarr, and it says something, I'm not sure if I'm getting it 100%, but technology is merely a tool when wielded appropriately can enhance this human endeavor we call education. And so in there, I call it a tool. I call it a wielding appropriately. So we need to have skill in using the tool and the technology that it is, but it is not the end. And in enhancing this human endeavor, this is a human thing. And people are like, oh, the technology, it's going to take over, and the robots are coming. But you know what? As much as we have these visions of, Terminator coming in the future, it's not now. And humans are still involved very much in all that happens. And technology allows us to enhance this relational practice that we have as educators. All right, so that's my thoughts. Tim and Pav, thanks so much for your thoughts. Go take a listen, people. So many good things to think about as we think about technology. Technology is not the only thing, it is a thing. And as a tool, it can help and streamline and make more efficient us so that we can do the other parts of teaching better because we have some systems in place. All right, have a fabulous day. I'm gonna get inside because it is really, really wet out here and I'm almost home. Okay, bye. Hey, PLN, October 6, 2021. Fresh Air at 5 coming to you live from Abbotsford, BC right now this morning. And it's not raining today. I'm thankful for that. And things are cruising along this week at a rapid pace. We got a family emergency that took place this week. So, you know, when those things happen, it affects your ability to focus and do your things that you need to do. So that happened on Monday that my father-in-law had an issue with his heart, and my wife had to fly to Calgary. So he's in the hospital, just sharing that. And how does that tie in with what I heard on episode 187 of House of Ed Tech? So, Chris, thanks so much for episode 187 of House of Ed Tech. And you bring us a couple of things. One, about change in education and what is going on to change education. We look back at the past 18 months. My thoughts are this, that I've seen some reversion back to not using the technology that was so impactful and useful during the emergency remote teaching that we were doing and the past year as we use technology to connect with our students, and people are going back away from that. So I'm pushing hard in my space to make sure that our teachers are still using those tools so that we can connect with them. All right, you talked about student engagement, and there's 6 points that you made, and one of them is about the student-teacher relationship. And I believe that that is critical and important. And this past week, or yesterday, with my middle school students, you know, I started talking at the beginning of the day about, you know, you ever come to school feeling kind of down and feeling kind of heavy and things aren't going along, you know, super great? And I said, yeah, well, Mr. Carpenter's having a go right now with this situation I mentioned about my father-in-law. And, you know, I just talked to them about me being real, me being human. And I said, I want you to know that I'm glad I'm here. That, you know, I am glad to be with you right now. There are things going on outside of the room, but you need to know that I'm glad to be here. And I think that makes me more human in front of them and makes me vulnerable, and sharing that's important. Thanks, Chris. Thanks all. Got one more to listen to. Bye. One more thing for October 6, 2021. This morning, as I'm wrapping up, I turned to my next podcast in my queue, and behold, what did I see but a podcast that I was on with Scott Nunes on Education Today, and we recorded a bit ago, but then it just came out today. And Scott, thanks so much for putting our conversation out there and sharing a bit more about ourselves with the people that listen to us. And that's episode 1 of season 2 of Education Today. What an honor to be the first episode of season 2. And Scott, thanks so much for your persistence in doing podcasting. Our lives are full, they are rich, and they got a lot going on. And, you know, I look at you with your young family and how you're doing the dad thing and being, you know, an educator and being a podcaster and doing all the things that you do. And it's important that we make sure we slow down and we make sure we take care of ourselves. So thanks for listening, Fresh Air at 5 listeners. I would encourage you to go hear more of my story on Education Today podcast with Scott Nunes, season 2, episode 1. And this is the second podcast this week that I have listened to that has had my voice on it. And it's just weird. But, I guess I'm out there making a difference in somebody's life. If you're making a difference in your life, I'd like to hear that, because I wonder sometimes if I'm just speaking into the void and not getting feedback from people. So if you're listening to this and you're take a listen to these podcasts with George Koros that earlier this week, as well as Scott Nunes, drop a message, let me know, because it would fill my bucket and help me feel like I'm making a difference, because sometimes you just wonder. I know I'm making a difference, but it's nice to hear that. All right. Okay, so that was me just groveling, but Scott has got a great thing going on, and so you should listen to his podcast and his other episodes with other special guests. All right, Scott, shout out to you. Happy day. Chris Nessie, Tim Cavey, all of you that I mentioned. Peace out. Bye. One more thing for October 6, 2021. This is the last podcast I'll listen to today, but I was out traveling and have now stopped, and I'm able to record a reflection on Shooks and GIF episode 2 of season 5, and thanks, Jen, for putting out an episode that we can learn a little bit more. So this one is called with the help, a little bit of help from my friend. With a little help from my friends and you, I can't even get that out, talked about how you got some inspiration over the past recent while from some of your EdTech friends and people that you connect with about some different resources. So there's show notes that you can take a look at that she's got in place so that we can go and not have to write all these things down while we're driving. But it was really great, Jen, to hear you talk about the Ditch That Textbook social media Google Slides that are formatted so that students that aren't able to have social media can practice in class and have different formats for having discussions about what is going on with social media and all those kinds of things. You talked about the John Sowash podcast about how to do something that was tricky, like duplicating Google Sites for students and having a template there. And that was great to go over that. I'm going to have to go listen to John's podcast because of that. And then towards the end, you talked about the Shake Up Learning Back to School Conference that is now over, but resources are still available until the end of October. So I'm going to jump in, take a look at that myself so I can learn some things. And you also mentioned some of the best Pro D that you've ever attended was Tony Vincent's Classy Graphics. And so I am actually considering right now going to take that Classy Graphics course and sign up so that I can improve my skills with Google Drawings. All right, so yes, today I had Google Drawings going on and we did some shapegrams with my grade 3 to 5s. Fabulous. They loved them. Looking forward to more. Have a great day, Jen. Talk to you all. Bye. Hey, PLN, it is October 7th, 2021, out here for Fresh Air at 5. Just started listening to episode 65 of Educational Duct Tape podcast with Jake Miller. And Jake, out of the gates, I haven't even gotten into the episode. I just wanted to respond to the bummer feelings that you've got going on about the anonymous person that tweeted and said enough promotion about your book. That's the challenge when we put ourselves out there in social media, is that we get mean people that don't come to us and talk to us. They do it through social media, maybe because they're jealous, maybe because they, aren't doing what you're doing, or, they do think that. And it's unfortunate that they do think that. As an author, as a creator, you're proud of the work that you do, and we need to promote what we do. And I'm promoting what you're doing. And so I'm telling you, people, if you don't have Jake's book, Educational Duct Tape and EdTech Mindset, go get it. Go get it. All right, that's my thoughts. And Jake, back to the episode. All right, bye. And as Jake steps onto his soapbox to talk about something, it was about Plato. And Plato had a quote: "Never discourage someone who is making progress, no matter how slow." And you know what? It's about getting better. It's not about getting perfect. It's about getting better. And thanks, Jake, for that reminder. I have a better mindset, not a perfect mindset. And I've been pushing on this for a long time with my students in my space. I talk about perfectionism and how perfectionism is a challenge and a problem because it distracts us from seeing our progress and only looking at the product. And so it's really important that we look at the process and the progress that we make instead of the product at the end. That's the goal, but should not be the goal. All right, so I'm going to step off my soapbox here and go get Jake's book. I'm going to say it again. It's great and glad to hear it, Jake. Keep going. I got some other things to say just for you. One more thing for October 7, 2021, Josh Stamper was a guest on Jake's show, Educational Duct Tape, and it was fabulous to hear Josh talk about how his former school was using Google Forms and Sheets to collect and curate the data that was informing their behavior intervention strategies at their school, and how they were using positive behavior intervention strategies, PBIS, and tracking the data to see those positive behaviors that are going on as opposed to just the negative behaviors, which just lead to possibly more negative behaviors because there's not a reward system in place for doing positive things. And Josh, I appreciate your thoughts about the relationship and how your office staff would go to the classroom so the teacher could step out of the classroom at that moment in time for a teacher-student, short walk conference real quick, that the relationship between the teacher and the student would be maintained even in that difficult time. I heard someone tell me that there's a story about a big important person at a company that made a decision that cost the company $1 million. And the worker was like, well, I guess you're going to fire me. And they're like, no, we're not going to fire you because that decision that you made costs us $1 million. You've got $1 million worth of reasons why we need to keep you because you learned some things and you're not going to make that mistake again. And that is, an example from real life where we don't get fired, but we stay hired because we have valuable information. Our student-teacher relationships are super important, and teachers should not quit on students. We should maintain that relationship and not quit on them. There is a place, I believe, that's pretty extreme, but I think that's a long, long ways down the line for simple things. All right. Thanks so much, Josh and Jake. Appreciate you guys. Have a happy day and keep on. One more thing for October 7th, 2021, this afternoon as I'm out delivering papers, I just wanted to a big shout out to Chris Quinn, who launched today for his first episode of Kinderlights podcast. And Chris, thanks so much for sharing and congratulations on the start of your podcast. Sorry about the plane overhead, but yes, you had a teacher named Elena Stanton, I believe, on your podcast, and she's a seasoned kindergarten teacher who shares her joy of working with students and teaching and project-based learning. So Elena, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to pass along your message through the podcast of Chris Quinn and Kinderlights along to our kindergarten teacher in our building because you've got some value. Super awesome, super fantastic. So welcome and congratulations, and you are part of my walk on Fresh Air at 5. Happy day. Bye. One more thing for October 7, 2021. Just listen to Ignite EdTech podcast with Craig Kemp, episode number 67, as he talked with Michael Drezick about Global Maker Day. So that's coming up October 12th of next week. And I had no idea, but I know now. And I'm excited about it because I'm going to go home after I'm done doing my walk right now. And I'm going to look it up because I think I could probably integrate some of this into my classroom space next Tuesday and participate in Global Maker Day. So thanks so much, Michael and Craig, for bringing this to my attention. I appreciate it very much. It's exciting, Michael, to hear about the work that you're doing and how you as a tech integration specialist are working in classrooms and making a difference, and you are excited about that. So that's super fantastic. Thanks, Craig, for bringing this episode to us. And I got to go because I got to go deliver paper over there. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye. One last thing for October 7th, 2021. It's been a fabulous day of listening. I've listened to, I think, 3, 4, maybe 5 podcasts today, and it's been great. My last one that I listened to was a brand new segment that George Koros is bringing us on the Innovators Mindset podcast called Mindset Monday. And George, you got to play that music. I love it. So good. And I'm challenging you to play the music without laughing because the chimes, the fairy chimes are fantastic, or maybe the angel harps. I think it's more like angel harps that you're playing. And I think it's awesome. And I chuckle with you because it's so fun, and you're doing a great job. So I appreciated their first episode, challenging us to think about our compelling reason of why we will change and do something different than we're doing. And if we are doing something right now and we don't have a compelling reason for that, then figure out how we can have a compelling reason for that and change to something that makes us compelled, because that compilation is super important for feeling great and for making a difference and feeling that you're making a difference. And so when it gets hard, you know why you're doing what you're doing. Thanks, George. Have a fabulous day, all. Happy Thursday. Bye. Hey PLN, it's Friday, October 8th, 2021, and we are at the end of a week, and we're walking into Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada, and we have a long weekend ahead of us. So just a little bit of an update for those of you that have paid attention back on Tuesday. I think I might have said that my father-in-law ended up in the hospital, and my wife flew out of town to go be with him and my mother-in-law and family in Calgary. And he is still in the hospital and is awaiting open heart surgery. He's in good spirits, and there's hope about how the surgery will go, obviously. And so thanks for your thoughts and prayers of you that are, and just wanted to say that so that you would get a little bit of an update before the weekend. This is the final segment of episode 40 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast, entering the 5th decade of episode numbers, and can't believe that I'm still doing it. Well, I can, because I intend to do it for a long time, but that it's amazing that I hit episode 40. This week, you'll hear in the recording a bunch of things, but I'm going to get on to today's episode, and I'll have one more thing coming up because I'm running out of time to talk about it very well. I just listened to Just a Teacher podcast, and I can't recall the episode number, but it's with a couple two teachers that are a couple. They're married, Elizabeth and Bill James, out of I'm guessing the United States, and they talked with Trav about their book and their work that they do as literature teachers in a high school, and how they connect the literature that they're working with their students and making it relevant so that the students can identify with characters in those, and they don't shy away from hard conversations. That's fascinating. I admire English teachers because of the work that they do, and I am not an English teacher, and that is not in my wheelhouse. One more second, I will be right back. One more thing for October 8th, 2021. On the heels of episode 38 of Just a Teacher podcast with Trav Golter, as he interviews Elizabeth and Bill James, and they talk about literature and how they have a book called Sailing the Sea of Troubles, and how they have written a book about the, gender inequality, racial inequality, inclusiveness, and tying that to relevant literature and old literature and seeing the connection to our world today. And so I haven't read the book, but I listened to them talk today, and I appreciate your passion for changing students' lives to be critical thinkers in our world. That's one of the 4 C's, and how do they communicate that? And they're being creative with their expression of who they are and understanding what they have to think about the current situation in politics and things like that. And one thing that stood out to me is that you said that you need to share with the students the things that are going on in such a way that they don't know what you think. That's a challenge. That's hard. I am a media arts teacher, and I, even in ways that we talk about media, how do I separate my own personal thoughts? That's noble of you. I appreciate that. I need to work on that a little bit more so that my students don't know what I think at the end of the day, and that I don't overtly tell them. So, never thought of it like that before. Appreciate that. And so I'm out of words. I am out of words for right now. Appreciate both of you sharing, and Trav for having them on your show. And have a great day. Trav, you're approaching 40 episodes just like I am on right now. So fantastic, and congratulations to you. Happy Friday all. One last thing for Friday, October 8th, 2021. You know how Daniel Pink talks about that idea of flow and how we get into the groove of whatever we're working on, and time seems to go by and we just forget about whatever else is going on because it's just clicking, it's just ticking. It's like being a musician, jamming with friends, and before long it's like late into the night and early into the morning you've been doing that. So this morning, as I'm wrapping up, I listened to a podcast with Trav Golter on Just a Teacher podcast, and then I was like, I got some more time, and so I'm walking, and I saw next in my queue was Control Alt Achieve podcast with Eric Kurtz, and Eric, it's episode number 10, and he has a segment about build a jack-o'-lantern with Google Slides and Moat, and I was like, that's cool. Moat's an audio insertion annotator tool that can be used by teachers to give audio feedback. Students can use it, and Eric talks in this as he was a guest on someone else's podcast. Didn't catch where that was, but he was talking about the incorporation of Google Slides for other than presentations and using Moat to insert audio into those Google Slides. Thanks, Eric, for your work. Appreciate that, and I'm a big fan. Been following you for a long time, and you know what? I saw this activity a long time ago and haven't embarked on it with my students, but I think I'm going to, because there's a level up that's going on with incorporating some audio into some Google Slides. I use Google Slides all the time, but don't put audio into it because for me, that's just weird at this point, but there's a great place for it. So thanks for your inspiration, and have a happy Friday to all of you. Okay, check it out. Control Alt Achieve podcast, episode 10. Peace out. Happy Friday. Bye. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoy this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcasts by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.